Welcome to Black Angus Reviews. The internet is abuzz with D23 news and speculation. The Mandalorian revealed a beautiful yet, in my opinion, directionless trailer that has many hopeful. Ewan McGregor revealed he is in fact reprising the Obi-Wan Kenobi role, and a poster for Episode 9 was released, as well as a second trailer that we've thus far only caught glimpses of. I happened upon this article by Morgan Lewis from VGCultureHQ.com with supposed spoiler points for Episode 9. I'd like to share that with you, as well as my own opinions and how I feel about Star Wars culture as a YouTuber in the present moment. First and foremost, read at your own risk. While at this point these spoilers may just be rumors, we have corroborated them with 3 separate sources over several months. We did not feel comfortable posting them because we wanted to be sure, but after the Rise of Skywalker footage at the D23 Expo, we feel confident that the majority of this information is correct. Read at your own discretion and take it with a grain of salt as of right now. Kiati Moonshine of the infamous Star Wars spoiler forum MillenniumFalcon.com has posted some major spoilers regarding the Rise of Skywalker. They claim to have corroborated the spoilers with several sources, and we can confirm that we have heard the same rumblings ourselves. One important thing to note is that George Lucas did help J.J. Abrams with certain aspects of the film. What lends credibility to these spoilers is the fact that it screams Lucas's world building with J.J.'s touch. How involved Lucas was, though, we do not know. Some is cryptic, so we'll break it down in a moment. Alright, so here are the points as follows that are spoilers, supposedly. The world between worlds and the wills. There's a reason why Hayden has been at the last 2 celebrations. Snoke does have a true identity, but no one has guessed it. Kylo is not the villain of the story. The main villain is connected to the Star Wars lore. Hint, they are beyond Sith and Jedi. Rey's biological age is not her true age. Her real name is not Rey. Luke has a fight scene in the flesh, which is scrapped concept from Return of the Jedi with Obi-Wan. Chewie dies. Nothing is retconned. Contractually, Disney cannot touch the 6 films. They can make us view the old films in a different way, though. Rey's fall is somewhat of a misnomer. The villain has a very specific vendetta against the Skywalker lineage. Rey's parentage is central to the story. She is not, quote-unquote, nobody. Alec Guinness. Matt Smith's role is significant, yet he's still not listed. His identity is top secret. The alleged flash fights are not what you think they are, or as they've been described. It will be the longest Star Wars film. The Worlds Between Worlds was introduced in Star Wars Rebels. It is a place where time simply exists. It very much mirrors Lost's view of time. Everything that has happened already happened, and you cannot change the past. This would also make sense given that they state that Disney is not allowed to retcon the original 6 films in any way, shape, or form. Lucas stated in an interview with James Cameron that the wills exist in a higher dimension of our own and are quite literally the will of the Force. Is this higher dimension the world between worlds where all of time is happening simultaneously? Alright, and in this interview, there's a clip in this article where George Lucas and Cameron are talking. George Lucas says, the next 3 Star Wars films we're going to get into a microbiotic world, but there's this world of creatures that operate differently than we do. I call them the wills, and the wills are the ones who actually control the universe. They feed off the Force. James Cameron, you were creating a religion, George. George Lucas, back in the day, I used to say ultimately what this means is we were just cars, vehicles for the wills to travel around in. We're vessels for them, and the conduit is the midichlorians. The midichlorians are the ones who communicate the wills in a general sense. They are the Force. Cameron closes saying, but you're putting detail and a facade of science around an idea that's pretty timeless, which is the spirit, soul, heaven, causation. But in your world building, you're going back to archetype, which is spirit, the Godhead, all that sort of thing. Alright, so the article continues. It also hints that Hayden will reprise his role as Anakin. Will he help guide Rey or his grandson Kylo? Will he appear alongside his son? Will they recreate Alec Guinness like they did Tarkin in Rogue One? That would be very interesting, but this is still very vague. If Snoke's origins are revealed, that will make many fans happy, but who could he be? Is he really dead? It states that the main villain is beyond Jedi or Sith, which Snoke proclaims to be. He also has a seemingly intimate knowledge of the Skywalkers, and Anakin in particular. He may be the ultimate villain of the story in some form, especially given the main villain is tied intimately to Star Wars lore. Rey's biological age versus her real age is interesting. Was she somehow frozen and released until the time was right for her to come of age? Are her memories of her childhood even reliable? Maybe she did receive training in her childhood. The Force Awakens made a huge deal of her identity. Who is this girl? But The Last Jedi dropped it. It seems JJ will finally explain what he intended in the first film. Luke having a fight scene in the flesh is something we've all wanted to see in years. In Star Wars annotated screenplays, it actually revealed that Obi-Wan was supposed to help Luke fight Vader. Lucas later scrapped this idea though because he thought that Luke needed to be on his own. What if it's Luke who tries to bring back his former apprentice, and Rey and Kylo's battle is a red herring? Chewie dying would not be surprising. He's barely had a role in any of these films anyway. As sad as it would be to see him go, if he goes out, hopefully it's in a blaze of glory. First off, seeing the poster, I'm interested. Having this image paired with the title Rise of Skywalker puts it in a whole new light for myself. Palpatine is the creator of Anakin, the whole Skywalker line up to this point. He's been the villain of the previous two trilogies. What better way to try and unite the fanbase than go with what's worked twice before? People will complain that Disney is creatively bankrupt, and in a lot of ways, I'd agree. But Star Wars is set up to be a very predictable, repetitious series. Darkness rising in the shadows of a peaceful galaxy. Light blossoming miraculously from an all-consuming evil presence and control. Light and dark, yin and yang. It's the very core fabric of Star Wars. Last Jedi tried to completely shift the series away from the tried and true formula, and now we have a fractured fan base as divisive and reactionary to the opposition as post-2016 election America. The world between worlds is the first point noted. I said this in my Rey is Shmi video, that containing the Star Wars saga and a Superman Red Sun kind of time loop would be interesting if done well, but ultimately makes the struggle of light and dark feel pointless. Star Wars has always seemed a single, linear story, the rise and fall of good and evil reflecting our world and the powers that have came and went. The Jedi and Republic being the most prominent reflection of the real world, a diligent democracy formed and establishing a long peace, slowly decaying due to petty power grabs, and those with the power to act becoming complacent due to the lack of threat. A virtuous religious order that stands for liberty, warping with its prolonged involvement in the government till it itself becomes a tool of a repressive regime. With Snoke, I don't care about who he is. They had the chance in Last Jedi and they thought they'd be clever by doing a haha gotcha moment. Doesn't matter. Last Jedi apologists will reference Sidious not having a backstory in the original trilogy, but that was the start of the story for us. He's already established in passing in A New Hope. We're seeing things play out in the moment. But when a new regime arises, even grander than the first, you need to explain that, as we were left in 83 to assume the Republic was to be built from the defeat of the Empire. With Sidious back in some capacity, who cares about the Kmart brand Emperor? Kylo not being the villain is interesting to me. A lot of anti-Reylos on my side of fandom have been quite rabid about Bendemption being a thing. I for one haven't picked a side. I'll buy it, if done well. But the story of Vader's return to the light gives precedence for this possibility regardless of my feelings. A point I've never understood with my side on this matter is if Kylo is a discount wannabe Vader, a much lesser Darksider, then why couldn't he be redeemed? People will reference his patricide with Han Solo as making him unforgivable compared to Anakin's never murdering his family, but I think his 20 years of a genocidal regime defeats that rationale. The main villain is not Sith or Jedi, but connected to lore. If it's the Wills, I'd be very interested to see if this subtext to all this ends up being Lucas' own philosophical struggle with a higher power, much like Ridley Scott in the Alien prequels and Exodus. I can't even put to words what that would mean for me, so I'll just leave it at that. Another person I could see them pulling out of the hat to try and appease my part of fandom is none other than Darth Maul. They did it for Solo, the Clone Wars, Rebels. Clone Wars, of course, with Lucas' oversight, but nonetheless, he's a very bankable villain. He has the look, the intensity, and arguably the best fight in all of Star Wars. I'd argue he's just as identifiably Star Wars as Darth Vader. Another key point being rumors from D23 that Rey wields a red double-bladed lightsaber. Of course, Maul being the famous Sith we know to wield such a weapon. Aside from him, my other guesses would be Dooku, who was really a dark-bent gray Jedi, jilted and cast aside for Skywalker. Jar Jar, who was clearly meant to be a dark side parallel to Yoda, of course that'll never happen, or the Bendu from Rebels, as he has enormous power and there's a lot to play with there, given his perspective of the Force. Let me know who you guess. What I'd personally love to see, though, would be Mother Talzin and her dark side witchcraft somehow involved in this. The point that gives me the most faith in all of this to have a chance, either this film particularly or the franchise long term, is that Disney is contractually withheld from retconning the first 6 films. I'm a prequel fan, first and foremost, and I'd say we're the most ignored part of the fan base. It's reassuring, to say the least, that my part of fandom can't be scrubbed away. Last major point of those listed, Rey's parentage. Another infamous gotcha moment Disney shills will tell you you're stupid for questioning. I'm really hoping she's a Skywalker, so all the Reylos will be triggered. It's very clear in Star Wars that lineage is an indication of power potential. From what I've gathered from Rey downloading abilities and know-how from Kylo, and Snoke's words regarding her indicating to me that she's the Force's answer for Luke tapping out of the Force, her never before seen power level would be more digestible if it had a reasonable explanation. Being born of a Skywalker cast aside for some reason would make a lot of sense, or perhaps a Sidious or Skywalker clone. In closing, I'd like to address a problem I've noticed in Star Wars related YouTube and fandom. The Last Jedi ravaged what was once a fun universe to explore and enjoy. Before, if you loved or hated the prequels, it was argued at that point. It was the lore and whether new entries aided or hindered the lore. No one noted what your gender, color, or political affiliation was in regards to Star Wars. It didn't matter. It was escapism. Various buzzword-ists weren't involved because Star Wars is intrinsically a universal, multi-ethnic based story, the hero's journey. Quote-unquote Nazis and other boogeymen aren't fans of a series that vilifies their motives. Star Wars has elements of history, religion, mythology, philosophy, and more to build a new contemporary mythos for young people to have as a guide in life. While the anger and hate, justifiably so, has helped various channels and followers form a community like-minded on that issue, along with general disdain for Disney, there's a growing insular culture I notice where, if anything Disney makes is liked by one of us who's garnered a following from our criticism, people throw the label of shill or not a real fan and other vitriol our way. There's a culture looming that if you're in our ranks, you can't like anything new. You can't give props when they do something right. Ultimately, we love Star Wars, and we should be cheering Disney to the finish line when they do right by us. We want the culture George composed at Lucasfilm to come back. We want good products of various formats that all respect the lore and respect the customers that made the $4 billion investment worthwhile in the first place. They can't do that if all they hear from half the fan base is constant negativity. That is largely what I notice in the fandom that's hard to put to words, but I'm clearly noticing now content that's only trendy and all negative. It's important to voice what we dislike so a company can serve us, but I don't see anyone, generally speaking, like anything. It's clear what we don't want from Lucasfilm, but I'd say it's very much unclear for them to know what to serve us, a clear, high-paying part of fandom. I think it's important for the fandom to look itself in the mirror from time to time and ask, what was my purpose to get on here? Was it to connect with people that were fans of something and wanted to sustain or improve the quality that faltered? Or was it to get paid for outrage clicks, regardless of personal investment? I don't think a lot of channels wanted to become news channels, but the algorithm discouraged them. My answer to creators that might feel trapped is simply make your own algorithm. Have some integrity to what you want to do, not easy clicks dispassionately made. Check out the channels linked below that I feel embody this perspective, and consider subscribing.